X is written and directed by Ty West. It features Mia Goth in the role of Maxxxine and also the role of Pearl, which is the central figure of the film of the same name, Pearl, from the same year. Now, Pearl is a prequel to this, but it was released after this, and there is a sequel on the way called Maxxxine. Now, I saw Pearl a few months back. I saw it before this. I knew it was a prequel, and I was kind of like, you know what? I don't often get the opportunity to do this, to watch the prequel movie first, because they tend to be made, obviously. Well, they're always made after, or certainly released after the original film that comes out. So I thought I wanted to watch Pearl before this, just to see how it affects my viewing experience going into this, knowing that certain characters in this film are from that film. I was a little confused when I came to this, and I was like, okay, but Mia Goth is the central character here, Maxxxine, but she looks identical to Pearl. Is she Pearl? But she can't be Pearl, because this takes it's like 40 years after or 50 years after Pearl. So I was a bit confused until I get into the film and I realised, okay, so she's not playing the same character. She's playing, although she does come back as Pearl in this film, but she's also playing a new character who looks like the younger Pearl, but isn't the younger Pearl. So now that that's cleared up, the question is X any good, and how does it fare in relation to Pearl? Well, I'll say this. I did prefer Pearl, okay? As far as the two films go, I thought Pearl was the better of the two. So for those who don't know, Pearl, who shows up in this film as an old woman, is a absolute psychopath, okay? So right there, in this film, you come away only knowing that she's a psychopath. She's completely nuts. She goes on a bit of a killing spree in this film with a bunch of young people who come to her property, or her husband's property, her and her husband's property, to make a porn film. Pearl and her husband don't know this. They just think they're renting this out to some people who are stopping by as they travel across country. What they haven't told them is that, oh no, that their house, their barnyard, is actually a pretty good location for us to low-key shoot this porn film, which obviously ends up being a complete mistake for them, because they end up on the house of two psychopaths who ultimately will want to butcher them. So there's all your story and everything you need to know. And coming to this film, having seen Pearl, having seen her creation, having seen where she came from and how she got to where she is, where we find her in this film, I don't know that watching this first would have been better or worse, to be honest. It is interesting knowing her backstory, coming into this, knowing who she is, and going, oh, okay, so that's Pearl. An unrecognisable Mia Goth, it's got to be said. I wasn't sure throughout this, and props to Goth. You know, what a fine actress she is, because she does an incredible job in Pearl, it's got to be said. But here she's playing this new character, Maxxxine, and then she's playing against herself in some scenes where she's all made up in this old woman makeup, playing the old Pearl. And I couldn't tell. I was like, that's not Mia Goth, is it? In the makeup? Is it? It wasn't until we got to the end credits that it was like, oh, it was. She was playing both. So again, props to Mia Goth. Fantastic actress. But just seeing this group of people come into this environment and meet this character that I knew already, right off the bat, you're like, oh, you're in trouble now. I think when Pearl goes nuts in this film, it would have been a bit more of a shock. Whereas here, I was waiting for it. I think this sets things up for, like, essentially the husband to be the nut job, and he's, you know, protecting his wife for whatever twisted reason. But actually, he's just trying to keep the secret in, really, protect his wife's secret that she is full on nutso. Look, as you can guess, if you haven't seen this film, it is a nuts film. You know, it doesn't hold back. Some of the sexual stuff I seriously could have done without. I mean, you know, obviously it's right there in the plot synopsis. It's probably the reason I did watch Pearl before this, because the way I saw it, I was like, okay, if I watch Pearl and I like it, I will go back and I will watch X. But given that what I know of the story to X, I'm not kind of running to jump into that. You know, a bunch of people making a porn film. How far are they going to push that? Are they going to go like full on with that element of it? Because it is rated an 18, and I will say that I think it's rated an 18 primarily for its violence. They managed to shoot the scenes when the actors are doing the trying to shoot the porno stuff. They shoot quite tastefully. Like, you never see, you know, like nipples and things like that. It's, you know what they're doing, but you don't see it all full on. So I appreciated that, because for me, sex in movies is the one thing that I just find cringe. I don't need to be watching that, quite frankly. The violence is, again, as I say, what the rating is really there for, and it is very brutal. If you're not into violence in movies, this ain't the film for you, because it definitely pushes that boundary when it comes to horror movies. You can see that what Ti West is trying to do here is harken back to your old 70s movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, bring them into the modern day, and go full on with it. This is a much better movie than Texas Chainsaw Massacre. For me personally, I know a lot of people will disagree with that, because TTM is held up in such high regard as a classic in the genre for many people. I've never seen it myself. I've seen the film. I mean, I've never seen why it's such a classic. It's a funny movie in many respects, like genuinely funny. Like there's humor in there, but it's very dark, very twisted, and it does kind of put a light on the whole. You know, the expression, "the youth is wasted on the young." I think that would be a very good tagline for this film. I think that's what this film is about. You know, you've got Pearl and her husband who, you know, there's certain things they can't do anymore. They're too old. You know, this is a guy who gets a little bit excited. He's one step away from a heart attack. If she gets a bit too excited, she looks like she's one step away from a hip replacement. These young guns come in to the environment with their corrupt moral ways and do a lot of the things, live out a lot of the desires that they have, the bodies that are able to do that, and this old couple can't. And as I say, youth is wasted on the young, and the young in this film is punished as a result of that. There's a conversation that takes place, you know, when these young people, they're out there to film this porno movie, and the inevitable conversation arises as to, you know, is this right? You know, is having sex on camera just for other people's kicks, is that a moral thing to do? I'm sure you can imagine what my answer to that question is if you know me, but you know, that question arises, and the people shooting it are all like, yeah, it's fine. You know, they're making justification, because at the end of the day, they want to make money. They want to get names for themselves. They want to break into the film industry and get that fame and the fortune that they think is going to come as, you know, a result of doing this. And so they make justifications, moral justifications for why, yeah, it's fine to do this whole porn business. But then something happens that suddenly makes one of these characters question that whole thing. And there's a scene where he breaks down in the shower. He's in the shower, something's just happened, and he breaks down. And that was a really powerful moment for me, because it spells out really the answer to the moral questions that are being raised in the film with regards to porn and its effects. And, you know, sex isn't just something that you do and has no consequences. You know, if you want to tell yourself that, fine, go right ahead and tell yourself that. But I think this film clearly highlights and demonstrates in a very clear way, a very, very powerful way, that's not the case. You can't just have sex without consequences. There are emotional consequences. So I appreciated that about the film. I will be interested in seeing where they go with Maxxxine. You know, knowing that the main character in this is called Maxxxine, it should be an indication, spoiler, as to who gets out of this film alive. Yeah, there's a running thing. I don't want to call out because you haven't seen this, so there's at least some surprises. There's something that happens like at various places during the film, and it's not until the very end of the film that there's a bit of a reveal, and you go, oh, okay, all right. So there's a history there with the Maxxxine character in regards to a particular element, and yeah, how the element was treated throughout the film kind of it made me think, okay, where are they going with this? But I can see that there's room for exploration of it in the upcoming Maxxxine film, so I'll be willing to let it slide for now and see what they do with it, see where they go with it. Very good movie, I think. Probably not one I'm going to rush back to anytime soon because, as I say, it is a bit full on. But I'm glad I watched it. I still think Pearl is better, but I'm looking forward to see what they do with Maxxxine. There you go. That's my thoughts on X. Maybe I will get around to reviewing Pearl at some point if I go back and revisit it. But yeah, for now, thank you for watching this video, and until next time, crack in.